Back with the WMAY Morning News Feed 722. I'm Greg Bishop, and joining us now is U.S. Representative Darin LaHood. We'll talk about infrastructure and a few other things. Congressman, thanks for taking time with us this morning on the WMAY Morning News Feed. How you doing out there?
Hey, I'm doing great, Greg. Great to be with you and your listeners today.
Absolutely. So we've got President Joe Biden set to sign a $1.2 trillion package for infrastructure. Illinois set to get $15.8 billion, could be more with different grants that are involved. What's your take on this infrastructure bill, and why did you vote against it?
Well, I voted against it last week, Greg, because Nancy Pelosi tied this to the Build Back Better bill, which is the tax raising bill that is going to raise taxes on on working families, on small businesses. Listen, go back earlier this summer when the infrastructure bill actually passed the U.S. Senate. If that would have been brought over on a clean vote to the House, I think there would have been a number of Republicans that would have supported it. More than 15, it would have been probably 50 or 60. But Pelosi held this bill hostage. She tied it directly to the reconciliation bill, which is the Build Back Better, which is a bill, again, that I could never support. It adds about $1.5 trillion to the deficit. It raises taxes. And that's the problem. I have long supported good infrastructure. My district, the backbone of that is roads and bridges and tunnels and airports and rail systems, and we should do that. But the way this process worked and the way that Pelosi hijacked it, in the end, I could not support that. And we ended up with a very partisan bill that, again, was tainted by what Pelosi did to it, and I couldn't be a part of that.
So when it comes to this infrastructure package, you have, of course, they're shifting some of the unused COVID dollars to, for instance, fund infrastructure projects. But they do a couple of different tax provisions, one being looking to generate, I think, like $28 billion over 10 years from taxing digital currency brokers, and have yet to really see the clear definition of what that could be in that space. There was another tax provision, too, that dealt with some kind of tax credit for employers. Talk a bit about how this thing's ultimately going to be funded.
Well, remember, they said all along this would not add to the debt. In reality, when the Congressional Budget Office did the scoring on it, it's about $270 billion in deficit spending over about 8 years. So we're adding to the deficit, not just a few million or a few billion, $270 billion we go into debt over 8 years. So when they said and promised that it would be paid for, that in fact is not true. You just referenced two different tax increases. There's a third one in there too. I mean, these are provisions that were tucked in there that are going to, again, tax individuals depending on the business that you're in. And now, it did not raise the gas tax, but there, again, are other provisions in there that are tax-raising measures. But the bottom line is it is not paid for. About half of it is paid for by leftover COVID money, but a quarter of it is going to be paid for by taxpayers going into debt over the next 8 years. And frankly, that's not what was promised when the bill was originally introduced, and not something that you're going to hear Joe Biden talk about today.
Congressman Darin LaHood with us on the WMAY Morning News Feed at 726. Congressman, other things happening in Washington, D.C., of course, news over last week and into the weekend. Steve Bannon indicted. Should the former Trump administration be more willing to testify about what's going on with the January 6th commission?
Well, I will just say this. As a former federal prosecutor, I think you have an obligation and responsibility to comply with subpoenas. When you get subpoenaed, whether it's by a court or whether it's by Congress, you need to comply, and you need to, you're obligated to give that information. Obviously, Bannon didn't do that. Now, the Justice Department has discretion on whether to charge somebody here. They did not do that. But let's go back a little bit, Greg. When Eric Holder was in contempt, the Justice Department during the Obama administration never indicted him. There are other examples where people have been held in contempt. the Biden administration, I'm sorry, the Obama administration didn't bring that. So I think you need to put it in context here. But just as a general matter, I will say that I think it's important for people to comply with subpoenas.
Congressman, the January 6th investigation, it's led to a whole host of people being held, facing charges, but questions have been raised about their conditions. How do we ensure that we, give people proper due process and help maintain a standard of living within the jail while they await trial on some of these charges?
Well, there are a couple things on that. I did not vote for the January 6th commission because currently the U.S. Department of Justice, along with Homeland Security and a few other agencies, are doing an investigation on the 450 people that violated the law by coming into the Capitol as part of this January 6th event. They are being prosecuted appropriately. They have been given public defenders where they can't afford an attorney. They've been given every right in the court system. They've been given hearings. Some have been held because they couldn't make bond. Others have been held because they've been viewed as a flight risk in a court system. But I have not seen anything, Greg, up until this point that shows that there has not been where due process has not been given to them, where they have not had access to attorney, where they haven't been treated any differently than any other criminal defendant would have been. And again, that's part of the reason why I didn't vote for the January 6th commission, because let the criminal justice system play out like it would for anybody. I'm not at all concerned at this point from what I've seen that anybody's being treated any differently than a normal criminal process within the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Department of Justice. If and when I see evidence that in fact people are being treated differently or disproportionately, then I think we got to look at the possibility of other options.
Congressman, something else that some circles are focusing on is the outcomes of the John Durham investigation into the origins of the Russia-Trump collusion narrative and the Steele dossier that ultimately was used to open up multiple warrants, FISA warrants against Trump campaign or others affiliated with the Trump campaign and the president's administration for a few months into the initial phase of his administration. Where are we at on this? And do you foresee more coming out highlighting who may have crossed the line and getting that information into the ether, so to speak?
Well, Greg, just to review, Greg Durham, who is a neutral federal prosecutor out of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Connecticut, career federal prosecutor, was appointed by the Attorney General to look into this matter almost 2 years ago. Now, I think it's taken way, way too long, but he just indicted a Russian last week, Darkovich, who it turns out was blatantly giving false information that led to the Steele dossier, has been indicted. I think finally Durham is getting to the bottom of this. Christopher Steele, which was the origins of the Steele dossier, turns out that he was a complete fraud that Hillary Clinton, used to put together the Steele dossier to try to tie President Trump as a candidate Trump to the Russians. It turned out that was all built on a pile of lies and fraud. Now, it's amazing that it's taken 4 years now and Durham to get involved to do that. But I give Durham credit for bringing this indictment, for making comments on what Steele, who he was, as basically a fraud, but also looking at the predicate that was used for these FISA applications. FBI agents went into federal judges when they were applying for these FISA warrants, which is no small matter, and they lied. And people need to be held accountable for that. And so I think Durham's getting closer to holding people accountable to that, but we still got to give him the ability and the authority and the responsibility to get to the bottom of this. No American, regardless of political affiliation, should ever be treated the way that Steele was able to do this, and others within the Hillary Clinton campaign. And Jake Sullivan, that's currently working for Biden. He was involved with this, it appears. So we still have a ways to go to get to the bottom of it. We need to support John Durham and his investigation.
Well, again, the third indictment was Danchenko, the Russian operative, being charged with lying. He's pleaded not guilty. You've got a Clinton lawyer, Michael Sussman, I believe, also charged in this, and an FBI lawyer who did plead guilty to changing documents in that entire process. We'll see where all that goes. Finally here, Congressman, as we push the limit here past the news break just a little bit, congressional maps, where do you stand? You running again? Are we going to see you in a new district?
Yeah, I announced a couple of weeks ago, Greg, that I am going to run in the new redrawn 16th congressional district. It's unfortunate that these maps are blatantly gerrymandered. Pritzker went back on his word of wanting to have a fair map. I mean, I don't know if you've seen that, nonpartisan groups around the country have rated Illinois' map as an F minus because it's just terribly gerrymandered. And so, yeah, my district changes. It moves me farther north. I keep the Peoria area, Bloomington normal, but I go north all the way to East Dubuque, Iowa. I go all the way up to the Wisconsin border. So it's unfortunate, Greg, that I'm going to lose, it appears in this new map, Sangamon County, Jacksonville, Lincoln, some really good areas that I've enjoyed representing. But I look forward to running in the new redrawn 16th district and hopefully earning the trust of the voters.
We'll watch that closely as well, and we'll definitely stay in touch up until the point where you're no longer representing. If you do indeed retain that seat, we'll definitely stay in touch. Congressman Darin LaHood, greatly appreciate your time this morning. Be safe out there, all right?
Have a great week, Greg. Thanks.
You too. It is the WMAY morning news feed. Now 7:34. Kevin Hart is standing by in